Welcome to Recross the Paths, where we celebrate the Cube community one conversation at a time. Today, I get to have a conversation with Andrew. Welcome, Andrew. Thanks for being here.
Hey, thanks, Cade. Nice to be here.
Well, I'm really excited to sit down and chat with you today. Your project, The Archive, which we're going to dive into, is this amazing survey of the history of the game, and I'm just stoked to unpack it.
Yeah, it's been a fun thing to put together, and I was quite tickled when you reached out to me and said you wanted to talk about it.
Well, here we are. It's finally time. So before we get to the project itself, I'd like to set the stage a little bit and get some context. Andrew, why Cube? How did you get to this spot?
Yeah, I can kind of answer that two different ways. So let's start with a really practical, boring way. So I've played Magic on and off for a long time, but my favorite way to play has been limited and specifically drafting. And when I can, I like to be drafting in paper. But as you probably know, drafting's getting more and more expensive, and I'm finding it harder and harder to justify, forking out 25, 30, whatever dollars Canadian just to sit down at the table and draft. And especially because I'm a bit of a tryhard, if I'm drafting correctly, I'm passing those sweet expensive rares that are absolutely non-functional in draft and not even getting compensated for it. I guess the other thing is a lot of the sets more and more are Universes Beyond, and not to slam Magic Direction too much, but that's not my cup of tea. So unless I really love the IP, I'm probably not going to be drafting those sets. So Cube gives me an outlet to draft the way I want to draft for reasonably cheap, sometimes free, and that's the practical reason for Cube. But if you'll indulge me,
Absolutely.
this just got stuck in my brain because I knew you'd ask me why Cube. I got to thinking maybe why in a longer term Cube.
Yeah, absolutely. We're here for indulgences.
We're here for indulgences. Cool. So let's flashback. I'm going to date myself. I'm sorry for this, but I think I've always enjoyed building things for others, and I'm not sure I knew this about myself until I started pondering why Cube. Way back when my dad brought home a Commodore 64 computer when I was like, I don't know, 8, something like that. And I remember along with that computer, he brought this spiral bound like textbook on how to code in BASIC. And I latched onto that really early. And as early as I can remember, I started building little games. And the earliest thing I ever wanted to be was a video game programmer. Now I am not artistic, so we never got there. And this sort of translated all through my high school career. Like I was making games in coding class instead of actually doing whatever assignment I was supposed to be doing. Usually card games because they don't need to look pretty. So like
Sure,
blackjack,
right, yeah.
poker, whatever. A little bit later, I ran a bulletin board system called the Happy Monkey, if you want to know. That was in high school with a buddy. Built up a little community there. Built D&D campaigns for my friends in high school. Just like on and on building things like this. Ran a WoW blog, built a Warhammer 40k community here in Ottawa, things like that. It's been a lot of fun.
It sounds arguably like that may be more productive than some of what you were taught in class. Some of, we'll say, but
So, I mean, my teachers might dispute that, Cade, but thanks for making me feel good about past Andrew. I stopped a lot of this stuff though when I entered the workforce. I did become a computer programmer. I did that for a long time, and of course, parenthood started taking up tons of time. It's interesting because in around the time when I stopped building professionally, I picked up this building personally again. Again, I'd never really realized this about myself, but I got back into Magic, started enjoying building decks, and that eventually led on to Cube. So yeah, maybe this is all just a way to reconnect with the building feeling that I've always had. It's just my current outlet for that.
yeah, and it sounds like you're in good company in that kind of digital and engineering space that a lot of folks in the Cube world also have some connection there, right? Like maybe there is something to how we construct things or how we build things that's a little more universal there.
Yeah, that's probably true. I always tell my programmers at work, it's this isn't an exact science, as much as you want it to be. Programming is like half art, half science, and so
Right.
Cube feels like that too to me.
We were talking about one of the conversations I had more recently with my friend Maggie, and she said something about how fundamentals give you freedom. That you learn those rules, and then you can go explore, do those other things. That kind of resonates here for me.
Yeah, for sure. Shout out to Maggie, right?
Shout out Maggie. That's right. So, how did you get from kind of exploring with limited and wanting to draft more for free to building your own cube? What does that look like?
I kind of fell into Cube, or at least discovered Cube, when I was playing in a sealed league. There's a really neat online league. It's called the Arena Gauntlet League. Maybe we can link it at the end of this.
Sure.
But the TLDR of the league is, you open a sealed pool, build a deck. That's all pretty standard. But then you have to play 3 games a week within the league, and you get a new pack every time you lose a match. 11 losses and you're out. And the interesting thing in this league is matches are often spectated, so it was a really big community thing. But at least when I was in this league, the cadence of Magic sets was such that the league would sometimes end before the next set came out. I'm not sure that's possible anymore, but at the
You'd have to
time
play
it
a fast
was.
league, yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's not going to be very many weeks if you have to do that. So we'd often do a lot of cube side events in between, or sometimes during, but often in between. And that really got me going and into running other people's cubes. And then I built my own cube. It was in hindsight, pretty terrible Magic the Gathering Arena cube. Not quite power maxed, but pretty powerful. Dabbled in alchemy, which I've since decided I'm not a fan of. But there were a lot of good lessons there. For example, I learned that you really shouldn't put in 2-card combos that nobody but you knows about. I remember feeling really bad when I cast Star Extinction with Brash Taunter on the board and just one-shot somebody.
Well, when you don't realize that it's in there, that's another thing. But
Yeah, I knew that was in there.
okay, well, I was trying to give you an out there. I didn't know if that
No.
was.
No, and then I built another cube for that league. It was called Shattered Tribes. I looked it up. Tribals become typal for some good reasons, but I'm not going to go back and retroactively rename it. This was a cube actually designed to support a mini sealed league. So although it was singleton, you were going to open multiple packs of it, could get duplicates. So it was really interesting how that thing worked.
This is something we could probably unpack a little more with the cube itself, but did you find particular differences trying to design for a sealed pool versus for a draft pool?
Yeah, you need to really watch out in those environments for cards that get absurd in multiples. You can get away with that in traditional singleton, but if there's cards that the more you have, the more amplified the effect gets, it can get a little bit out of hand.
You're talking about kind of like your heir apparent type things, or you're just talking like anything that benefits from like a Goblin Rabble Master, I guess.
Yeah, stuff like that that's already pretty OP, but then you get a lot of them and it can be a deck all by itself. Then, again, as I said, drafting in real life is a little bit expensive. So at the time, I didn't yet have a cube group, but I had a draft group and ended up putting together a little tuber for it because we were only 4 most of the time. It was called Common Sense. It was a little pauper cube, but it was a Power Max pauper cube, and it was all right, but it was pretty boring to update. You just kind of look at the new set, find the new best in class card, slot it in, call it a day. It was fine. Let's just say it was fine, but it's not something I look back on all that fondly. The thing I had fun with, I suppose, in the Common Sense tuber was finding interesting and unique prints for the cards. The players I played with are really invested in. There wasn't an issue having a weird looking card or even a foreign language card and them not knowing what it was.
That seems really nice. Yeah, like when your play group is invested in that way, then while some of the things, maybe accessibility decisions, you don't have to make them the same way for that group.
Yep.
As you would trying to appeal to a broader audience.
Yeah, that group played a lot of Commander as well. This was back when I when I tolerated Commander. Commander and me don't get along as much anymore. The politics is tough. I like my 1v1 Magic where you don't need to worry about bargaining. Then November 2024, I think I found a local cube group that could fire 8-person pods at least once a month. And pretty soon after that, I started up the archive.
That's excellent. And what a blessing to find the group that you can actually sit down and play with there.
Yeah, it was just a random local Ottawa Magic Facebook group just sent out to feel like, does anybody in this city play Cube?
Hands go up, yeah.
One guy said, hey, we've got a small group here. Feel free to come out. We'll add you to the email list. And yeah, we can only fire a pod about once a month. We're all, let's call it late 30s to 50-year-olds with youngish families, so it's hard to arrange to get everybody out. But yeah, we can fire a 8-person pod about once a month, sometimes a bonus 4-person pod.
Well, would you believe I know how that goes, Andrew? We're trying to find the right windows to sit down and play.
Yeah, I would believe that.
Well, let's dive in some to the archive. You said this group kind of led into the opportunity to do a project like this. Andrew, give us an overview for the archive.
Yeah, so the archive is a 540 card cube, and the core conceit of the cube is it has at minimum 3 cards from every standard legal or type 2, if going way back, legal set ever printed, with a few exceptions. So I've included 4 sets that were never standard legal. That's Chronicles. Chronicles is, if you don't know what that is, it came out right after 4th edition. 125 cards from Arabian Nights, Antiquities, Legends, and the Dark, which I kind of regret including Chronicles because all of those sets are very hard to source cards from that are playable today.
Yes, very much so.
And then I have 3 cards each from Modern Horizons 1, 2, and 3. Unlike all the other sets where I allow myself to go over the 3 card minimum, Modern Horizon, I only want to have 3. Those cards can be a little bit bonkers, but they do have a lot of cool build-arounds, which is what I use those for. And then 2 standard legal sets right now, more to come this year, that I don't include are Avatar and Spider-Man. I have Final Fantasy in there as a nod to Universes Beyond being part of Magic's history. I can forgive Final Fantasy a little bit. I was a big Final Fantasy nerd as a kid, kind of still am. Played everything from 1 through whenever it went online, 14 or whatever. So I've picked some non-character cards from Final Fantasy to represent Universes Beyond in the archive.
So this is a prodigious scope of a project because there are a lot of sets. There are, even in just in the standard pool.
Yeah, let me see, there's 131 sets are represented right now.
That's amazing.
I haven't added Lore Eclipse yet. That'll be 132, I guess.
Wow. And so you have minimum 3, but you can add more. And that's just to fill out to the 540, right?
Yeah, exactly. There's right now 82 extras, which gives me about 27 more sets I can pack in here before I have to rethink what the restriction is.
Yeah, and I don't want to jump straight to the end on that, but like what happens at that point in your mind?
That is a good question. I mean, I could go down to minimum 2 cards, but I'm not sure actually. 540 is already a bit of a challenge, right? Like,
Yeah.
if you're firing an 8-person pod with 540, there's a good amount of that cube is not coming out. So pros and cons to that. There's a different experience every time for sure, but it's a lot harder to support themes and packages within your cube at that point.
Yeah. So what drew you to this kind of look at the game? You know, do you just wake up one morning and go, I want to have an encyclopedia of, of the history of this experience?
I mean, a little bit. Going back to something Maggie said, like she was talking about how her cube has this curio of the things she likes and enjoys about the game. And a little bit of this is it's really neat to flip through the archive and just look at cards with stamps from literally all of these sets and see how power levels evolved, the arts evolved, even just like the frames have evolved. It's really neat to go from anything from an alpha card to something in like Edge of Eternities. They're so different. Even the number of words on the card. That's something that always gets a lot of talk. So that's part of it. But also like it was an idea that I thought would work well with the cube group I was in. A lot of the players in that group don't engage with recent sets anymore. Some of them is because they don't like the direction Magic's going. Some of them it's like, I'm just really busy and have a lot of kids. And you know, it's life just doesn't allow me to do that, but I can still cube now and then. And so these players haven't played with the modern cards. And at the same time, when I was playing their cubes, it would feel like I was reading a novel of every time I was trying to do a draft because I'd never seen these cards. We didn't talk about this, but I started the game back in Revised, played till Ice Age-ish, and then dropped it for 27 years, only came back in Dominaria.
It's a big gap.
It's a huge gap. So like the main cube in the group is this modern cube, and modern doesn't really play things from the before times.
No, it's tricky, right? It captures an era that you're not familiar with, or I guess I would say at the time.
That is true, yeah. It captures an area I'm not familiar with. So yeah, it felt like, as I said, I was reading a novel and slowing down the table.
Yeah, the first time you read a card from modern, like a Deathrite Shaman or whatever, and if you're coming from Chronicles, it's going to be an experience.
So yeah, this gave me a chance to go back and look at all these sets that these people loved and really vibed with. At the same time, trying to show them some of the new cards that aren't so egregiously power crept that they can still understand them. It's not to say it won't happen. There was one guy, the first time I resolved a Ravager Worm, it just blew his mind. And this is just, a rare from Ravnica Allegiance, I think. That's not all that bad. I think it's like a 4/5 comes in with a counter and maybe fights something. That sounds about right. I think it's Riot.
I love that that's the mild, like, it only does these 3 things.
Right? That was kind of what he says. What do you mean it does 2 things when it enters? Well, cards these days, some of them are just come down, win the game. Not that they couldn't do that in the olden times, especially if they were a spell, but nothing's quite as pushed as they are now.
Yeah, it's a very different pacing. How do you approach that broadly? Trying to make cards from, like you said, from the olden days, gel with things from the middle era, kind of your Kamigawas and Mirrodins, and then with the modern day.
Yeah, I mean, the rule of thumb is...
Boy, that sigh was so powerful. I just have to let you know.
It's so hard sometimes. the rule of thumb, and it gets broken all the time because Magic designers don't stick with power bands all the time. But typically, a lot of the archive, if it's old, is rares, and once they were introduced, mythic rares even. And the newer you get, the more likely the cards are to be a common or an uncommon. If I want to include just a good creature from, say, when I'm looking at Lorna Eclipsed, there's probably no way it's going to be a rare card unless it's just a wacky build around. If it's just like an on-rate creature, the rates change too much. So a lot of it's just looking at the higher end of the power band back in the old times and the low end now. But that's not always true. Like if you look at Alpha, you have something like Swords to Plowshares, which is better than basically any removal printed today. So it reverses a little bit when you're looking at things like removal and that sort of effects. Like Counterspell, the 2 blue, you can't do whatever you want it to do. They don't print that much anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of the perennial experience of game design is your initial sets have all those basic effects at the cost. It's like, yep, what does this do? It counters a spell. Great. And then,
Yeah.
and then the further it gets, the more complicated it tends to become.
Yeah, exactly. Just trying to avoid word soup has been a big thing too. Again, I have players who don't play all that often and don't play the current sets. So I have a card like Shigeki in there, and it does a lot. I couldn't even rhyme it off right now. It's one of my favorite cards. But I can't have many Shigekis in the cube, or players are just going to check out, or just pass powerful cards that they shouldn't because they just get a bit of fatigue.
How tempting is it within that paradigm to just put like the most famous cards from each of those sets rather than like trying to build it into the cube structure?
I do try to pick some of the famous cards, although I do find that famous is very relative. The cards that are iconic to me, some of them don't resonate at all with anybody. Like, I mean, I love Mana Flare.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's a good card, but it's an iconic card. But they haven't printed something like Mana Flare. Do nothing except double everybody's mana.
Two in a red, hope
Everybody's.
your opponent doesn't get to capitalize on this before you do.
Yeah. Two in red. Hope they don't have a fireball.
Yeah.
I do put the cards I find personally iconic in there. As much as I can. Sometimes they don't fit. Like I still have regrets that I don't have a home for Muldrifter.
Mm.
I would love to get that card in there, but it's difficult to slot that in at the moment.
Yeah, and I think that's probably a good place to ask. Making changes is incredibly tricky, by my understanding. I remember one of the posts that really drew me to this project was you were describing the need to switch around some sets and rarities to make some adjustments. Your rule is that is it originally from the set that it's included in, or can it be from any of them?
No, I dabbled with originally from, and that's too hard, or at least too hard for me. I'm not that smart. Um,
Oh, I don't know
so
about that. I don't know about that.
so it's I just say that it has to be printed in the standard legal version of that set. So if it happened to be reprinted in the commander version, that doesn't count. But if it was in the standard legal version of the set, then it's fair game. I can go through an example if you want of
Yeah,
a weird change.
if it's the one I'm thinking of, it's so charming.
Yeah. Yeah, it probably is. I took this off Blue Sky where I posted it. So I wanted to put in Skirkridge Exhumer because I'm interested in zombies and goblins. So it's just read the card because nobody probably knows what it does. It's
There's one person out there like, you don't have to read the Skirk Reach Humor for me.
yeah, so it's one in a black 1/1. It's a zombie spell shaper. I love spell shapers.
Oh,
And then
yeah.
it has an activated ability. Black tap it, discard a card, put a 1/1 Festering Goblin into play. Festering Goblin's just a 1/1 black zombie goblin that when it dies, it gives something -1/-1 till end of turn. So I want to put that in my cube because it does a bunch of things. It gives a little bit of recursion to removal. It's a zombie itself. Have a discard matters package. It makes goblins. It makes zombies. And to do that, I was going to remove deadweight. Most cube designers just get to go, cool, make a swap. However, deadweight I had attributed to Lost Caverns of Ixalan. And when I looked, it was one of three, and only three cards in LCI that I had. So, okay, I need to fill an LCI gap. So to fill that gap, I looked around at what cards do I have that were printed in LCI and found a braid. So, okay, I can move a braid from Hour of Devastation, where it was attributed, up to LCI. Now I have a gap in Hour of Devastation. So, okay, what Hour of Devastation cards do I have not attributed to that? Okay, well, I have Unsummon currently tagged against Alpha. So I can move that. And because I had extra Alpha cards, more than the three per limit that I had, I could stop the chain there and kick Deadweight out, add in Skirt Ridge Exhumer, and be done with that change.
That's
And I
one
do that all the
change
time.
functionally.
That's
Yeah.
one change. And I do that all the time. And then because I'm broken in some way and want the experience visually to be nice, I have to go and procure dead weight from LCI and a braid from HOU.
Yeah, and you've said something about sourcing those cards. You are looking for the print, like that printing of those cards to fill out the cube.
Yeah, the best I can. Sometimes specific printing is way too expensive, especially if I get into like an alpha version of something. I'm not going to find those. The original printing of this cube, I just proxy the whole thing to get started quickly. So I have some that look like they're the original prints, and over time I'll probably get the proper ones where I'm missing, like either buy the proper ones or proxy the proper ones, because it is important to me that when you're fanning out your pack, it has a bunch of different card types. Like it looks like it's from all over the place, all through time. I want the alpha print beside the LCI print beside the Lorwyn print.
That's part of the experience, right? Like you said, just kind of building. Oh, this is what things look like now over 30. What are we? Almost 35 years ago
Yep.
to right now.
Yeah, exactly.
It was fun doing test drafts on Cube Cobra, right? Even getting that experience in the digital space of how jarring that change can be.
Oh yeah. Yeah, the old border stuff beside the, like, I don't know, the Universes Beyond frame is really interesting.
And so then tracking those changes, Cube Cobra is the gold standard for how people tend to put that together. You've gone a step beyond to kind of engage with all the moving parts here.
Yeah, I don't think I could do this with Cube Cobra alone. I mean, it has the tools to do it, right? I mean, as you said, I've attributed the proper set to every card on Cube Cobra, but I think to properly and quickly, quickly is relative, but
More quickly, yeah.
more quickly work through changes. I've set up a big Google sheet that listed all my sets, has columns for 3 columns for each. Sort of talks about what all the cards are, has a whole lot of conditional formatting to highlight where I have gaps. And when I'm making changes, I actually have to go into the spreadsheet first and start tinkering around. It was a bunch of work to set up,
Yeah.
but I think
Yeah.
it's really paid itself off over time. I also use it to do a lot of stuff. If you're in there and looking at it, you'll see that I have a lot of tags against the cards of my own, so that I can look at how are the different packages that I have in the cube supported. Do I have enough payoffs for each not archetype, but package? Do I have enough enablers? Is there fodder for the sack deck, for example? It's also just, I can use that to keep myself really honest about the 3 times. The other thing I'd like to do in there is, because there's always a temptation, especially because all of my recent experiences with 2018 and beyond, so I know those cards well. There's this temptation to just use those cards in the extra slots, fill the extra 82 out with newer cards, but I think that's against the spirit of what I'm trying to do. So I have calculations in there to work out what's the average age of the extra cards I have. It's currently sitting at February 2010, which I think is pretty good, actually.
That's amazing. So you can actually calculate, like, are we kind of in the middle of the timeline?
Yep. Yeah, and I think we're actually a little bit before the middle of the timeline, which I'm pleased with. When I take a card out of the extras and I'm putting one in, I always feel a little bad if it bumps up that average, and I feel a little good if it goes down.
Well, and as you noted, you've tracked a lot of different things in that spreadsheet, and it's really, you were very gracious to share it with me, to let me take a peek through and just kind of see some of what goes on behind the curtain to make that happen. Is that the sort of thing that you would anticipate using for other projects, or is like this is just a need for this particular endeavor?
I think it's just a need for the archive, honestly. The 3 other cubes I've built, I didn't need to do anything like that. Like, Cube Cobra is very feature rich and does a lot out of the box. It's just I've set such a interesting restriction for myself that takes a lot more tracking than Cube Cobra was designed for, that I felt this was really the only way I could do it. Actually, if people are interested, I have the spreadsheet. It's shared public, like it's shared globally, so long as you have the link, not editable or anything, but it's linked in the archives cube description right at the bottom. So if you want to see what mad scientist stuff I got up to, it's all in there for you.
You've mentioned it a couple times. I want to make sure that we engage with packages is a way that you've talked about structuring this cube. Because trying to cover this span of history, this breadth of variety that can happen, having some ways to anchor it seems very important. How did you approach doing that?
Badly at first. So This has definitely been a learning experience. I got the idea of packages, I believe, from the guys at Lucky Paper Radio. I think they're the ones who talk about it a lot. So if you haven't heard the term, the way I have internalized a package is it's smaller than like a deck archetype. It's more like 20 cards, 25 cards in a cube that form a little bit of an archetype. They're something you could include in your deck, but they will not be your entire deck. For example, one of the packages I have is a Discard Matters or a pitch package. So it's made up of, I think it's like 25 cards, where say 2/3 of them are ways that you can discard. They're seeded through blue and black, but in this particular case, so 2/3 are ways you can discard cards, usually for value. You'd hope there's value, although you
Yeah,
get into
yeah.
into some of the old cards, and it's just discard it because I told you to, and this creature's bad.
That's right. That's
But
right.
and then the rest of the cards are payoffs for discarding. And so an example of that's like Monument to Endurance or something, which I just want to say I was playing that before Standard got their hands all over it and went nuts. That was one of my favorite cards in the set came out of. That was Aether Drift. Yeah.
That's right.
So that I've got something like 12 packages in there. Not quite one per archetype, and some are more like payoffs for running a bunch of goblins. There's also zombies archetype, sacrifice. They're little side quests you can do when you're building a deck.
Did you start with those in mind, or did that come about after piecing some of this together?
The other, I guess, structural component of the archive is it's built on 5/3 color trios, wedges
Yeah,
or shards.
yeah. Wedges or shards? Yeah, I was like, there's probably a term for.
Yeah, that have overarching themes. Just super briefly, it has aristocrats in Mardu, tokens. I'm not going to be able to name all of these in white, green, red. Graveyards in Sultai, control is Esper, and a big mana in Temur. Bonus points for somebody who could get white, green, red as they went along.
White, green, red is Naya.
Naya, there we go. So it has those as sort of themes that allow bleed through those shards or wedges, and then the packages kind of augment that. So you might be building like a tokens deck that just happens to have a lot of goblins and a few goblin payoffs, or an aristocrats deck that's actually discarding for value, things like that. And as much as possible, the packages I've set up are trying to find some synergies between old, often terrible cards and newer cards. The Skirkredge Exhumer we talked about earlier is pretty decent for a spell shaper, but most spell shapers by modern standards are awful cards.
Yeah,
You're discarding a card for minimal value, and usually putting yourself behind if you're just playing that is how you want to play the card. But if you've got the pitch package, you're playing, like, say, a Monument to Endurance out there, you're maybe getting your minor value plus a Monument trigger. So I've tried as much as possible to blend the old and new.
it's an art for sure. So you also have like touchstones described on your overview. Is that something you think about, or is that connected to packages at all, or is that an idea to get started?
Yeah, you're talking about like the Shivan Dragon and Sarah
Yeah,
Angel and
yeah,
stuff
yeah.
like that. The touchstones that I've listed are actually creatures that, all alpha creatures, that I want to at least be playable in your decks. They may not be the best creatures in your deck. I'm not sure that Shivan Dragon can ever be contextualized as a banger anymore. I mean, maybe it can. But I would like you to not be embarrassed when you play your Shivan Dragon. If it comes down and just gets immediately snapped off by any old removal, like that makes me sad a little bit, and you've spent
Yeah.
6 mana. I mean, if somebody's Doombladed, okay, like that always happens, right? So there is some ways to trade up on these, but the touchstones are there really to try to help me reason about the removal suite in the cube.
Yeah, because you don't want the experience people have to be like, oh, old card's bad, new card's good, right? There's a balance there.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, every time we draft the cube, I ask people to like give their decks back to me, kind of sandwiched together with their deck and the sideboard on top of it, so I can see what's what. And definitely in the first run of the cube, it was basically old cards bad, new cards good. Like the sideboards were mostly old cards and old creatures, especially because they stink.
Yeah,
So, I had to do a whole round of nerfing the removal, which was pretty interesting, but I think it makes for a more interesting experience when you can recapture your childhood and yeah, slam the Shivan or Sarah and
yeah.
get paid off for it.
Just since I think that's probably an experience others will have had too. What did that look like to try to power that down?
After the first draft was actually when I picked those creatures out and said, these things must be playable. And then I pulled out all of my removal and kept the truly iconic spells that were honestly too good but needed to be there, like, counterspell, swords, Doomblade, things like that.
Yep.
And then anything else that was like especially modern, like new and just too efficient. Like I had Unable to Scream from Dustmourne, turn your thing into an O2 and for 1 mana, it's kind of like blue Swords of Plowshares.
Yeah.
Sorry, got to cut that for something clunkier. So I have, like in red, if we look at one of the spells, I have like Fiery Fall in here. It's 5 in red, deals 5 damage to a creature. So okay. Also has basic land cycling for 2. Like, let's not make it completely atrocious, but if you're aiming that at your Sheevan Dragon, it's at least even for mana. You can still kill it, but it's even. Or like in black, Feed the Swarm, black
it's
destroy creature
you,
enchantment.
yeah.
It's going to cost you life. But then also a lot of removal that points itself at smaller things. Like I would like people not to just get run over. So like a Baffling End in white, so you can exile something mana cost 3 or less. Shock. Cards like that. Shock's pretty iconic, but it's not going to deal with your Sengir Vampire or something.
I'm so glad you have the Stronghold printing of Shock. Thank you for that.
Man, it's a joy actually when I have flexibility looking through and finding the printing I like the most. And often, at least for me, it's the oldest or really old.
Yeah, that's interesting. Like you talked about taking a break around that time, but having played in the beginning, do you think that draws you to those older cards?
It really does. I'm not an art person a lot, but like the old Magic art calls to me. My favorite Magic art of all time is the OG Sarah Angel art. Douglas Schuler's painting there. That one's just gorgeous. And just things from that era tend to call to me. So I've tried as hard as possible to get those. I was putting in Prodigal Sorcerer the other day and just linked it on our local cube Discord where we talk through changes on our different cubes, and it just auto-completed to, I can't even remember what printing, but it was not the original Prodigal Sorcerer, and everybody was just like, you better not include that printing in there. I don't care if that's where it's coming from.
Yeah, it's like you gotta have Tim in there.
Yeah.
And the facial hair goals for sure. Andrew, what have you found has been the hardest set to source here?
The hardest set?
I guess not to source physically, like to get the cards, but like to craft into this environment.
Yeah. There's 2 different classes of sets that are difficult. So if you indulge me picking 2.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Nobody follows the rules on questions anyway, so that's
fantastic.
This is totally fine.
I'll be a little bit of a politician and answer the question I want to answer, not the question you asked. So I mean, the one type of set that's really tough, and thankfully there's not many, is sets that are just all bad cards. I'm thinking like Arabian Nights or Fallen Empires or Alliances or something like that. I mean, sidebar, I remember as a kid, maybe like 18 years old, driving with a buddy half an hour that was where the local game store was, the next town over, to buy a box of Fallen Empires, getting home, cracking all the boosters. All of them, even for the time, were stinkers.
Yeah.
So it's really, really tough.
You're sitting there going, where are the rares? Like, where are the...
Yeah, exactly. Like, I recently had to... What did I take out? I think I took out Ashes to Ashes. I think that was Fallen Empires. But I had to replace a Fallen Empires card recently because it's either like they're awful or they're so good that you can't deal with it. So I put in, anyway, an Elvish Hunter. She's a 1 in a green, 1/1 elf. You can pay 1 in a green, tap her, and target creature doesn't untap during the controller's next untap phase. And I was doing I got somebody to test draft on the Cube Talk Discord, and and one of their feedbacks was, "Why is this in here? It's so bad." And I'm like, I know, but go look at the card file, find me something better. And thankfully, they came across agreeing that maybe that's what you have to run.
Seriously, right? Your options are in Fallen Empires. You're like that, or Goblin Grenade, I guess, is maybe your most exciting.
I do have Goblin Grenade in there, which since I've recently beefed up the Goblins package is maybe going to be okay.
That's amazing.
And then the other type of set that's really hard is like a parasitic narrow set full of like narrow or bad mechanics, and I'm going to call it Kamigawa block actually here for this. I know a lot of people love Kamigawa. Actually, I love the flavor of Kamigawa. Just the way it's put together with what I'm doing in the archive, only having 3 cards for each of these sets, it's really hard to support. That had Splice, it had all the arcane stuff. Spirits with Soul Shift, this weird sweep mechanic where you're returning lands to your hand. Have you seen Epic? Do you remember Epic cards?
I absolutely remember Epic.
Yeah, like play this card and never play a card again.
I have a friend who played at the time the enchantment deck that uses the Epic spell that pulls an enchantment every turn.
Okay. I guess there's ways to break it, just maybe not here.
Broken is probably not accurate there, but it was a deck you could play for sure.
there's a way you can cast it. I mean, the saving grace of Kamigawa is it does have ninjas, so that I have a ninja.
Yep.
A more recent, I don't know if people aren't familiar with Kamigawa, and more recent parasitic sets, the Avatar set was actually quite parasitic. Like it
It's
has
like
all
with all
those,
the bending, right?
yeah, it has all that bending stuff, and it's really hyper specific into that set. And in my opinion, sets that have that, it's just going to add complexity or confusion to the archive. And as much as it was a great limited environment, I don't think its cards really contribute well to what I'm doing.
Well, what have you found most surprising about putting this project together?
I found a few things fairly surprising, but this is just, I guess, me catching up with the times, which is how bad creatures were for so long. I hadn't realized, I know people joked about it, but I mean, if I look at red creatures especially, and red these days is the color of creatures and combat and aggression and whatever, but I've found it so hard to find red creatures before 2002 that are really playable. I have a couple exceptions, like Fleng Tung Kavu, still great. Shivan Dragon I mentioned before, still playable in this environment. But yeah, like creatures were pretty awful for a long time in Magic. And when I originally played, I would love running out all those big dumb creatures and playing the game. I never had that sense back in the late 90s that creatures were awful.
Yeah, when you don't have anything to compare it to, it's like, well, yeah, this is just what a creature looks like.
Yeah, exactly.
I will be happy with my Darrellor and move on.
Then kind of a positive surprise is I found a lot of sets that I really like, and even before it was announced that we were coming back to Lorwyn, I'd really latched on to Lorwyn as one of the sets I liked in the archive, and it was one of the sets that I added a bunch of extras from that I didn't need to, just because the art was really whimsical, it had some neat mechanics, it seemed to not take itself super seriously, so I'm glad we've returned to that plane.
Yeah, falling in love with the things along the way. I think it sounds like was that part of the goal at the beginning to just experience some of those things you had missed?
Yeah, for sure. I definitely took a lot of time to just flip through almost set by set the different sets. Really time consuming, but a lot of fun.
One of the things I wanted to ask was about the experience of playing this. What do you envision games looking like once you get through the binder experience of looking at all these cards, trying to piece together the packages? How does it play?
It plays a lot like just pretty clean Magic, fair, clean Magic. There's not, caveat, there's one. There's not supposed to be many infinite combos. Um, you can slap Curiosity on Niv Mizzet and he can go infinite. Nobody's done it. I'm not sure if they've noticed it. But it's clean Magic where like a lot of retail limited Magic, you want to try and make mana efficient plays, be a good steward of your resources. It's not to say you can't build little engines in your deck. That's what the packages are there for. But they're not supposed to be all encompassing, and you should expect those to get disrupted so long as your opponent's managing the removal well. There are degenerate things that we've definitely seen. I have Channel in the cube, and that really constrains some of the cards I can have in there.
Yeah, Rise of the Eldrazi got really difficult all of a sudden.
Yeah. I would love to have a big Eldrazi, but I like Channel more because it's from my youth, so we're keeping that. I've purged a lot of cards. Skitterbeam Battalion I like a lot, but when I got turn 2 Skitterbeam Battalioned one time, I realized that was maybe a mistake.
Yeah, that's a one-time experience. You don't need that one many times.
My buddy was like, "I told you this was a was a dangerous card. Let me demonstrate," and then channels out 3 Skitterbeams.
Well, props to you for finding a way to make channel work. Oftentimes people say, "Well, let's just cut the enabler," but to say if this is the important element to make it work.
Yeah. It's just I can't imagine Magic without channel in it.
And then that's why we do Cube. You make a home for the cards that are important.
For sure.
As we were doing some of our prep work, you made note of Cogwork Librarian, and apparently that's a critical part of this project as well.
Yeah, for sure. I don't think I could do this project again and maintain my sanity without Jon Snow's tool. I actually came across it listening to an episode of Recross the Paths, so thank you for talking to Jon. That really helped me out. But yeah, I have a fairly substantial Cogwork Librarian project that I use to manage not just the restriction, which is pretty easy to set up in Cogwork. You can kind of set global variables almost to say, hey, for all of my Scryfall queries that I'm about to make through Cogwork Librarian, just use these sets, the ones we're interested in. And then I also have some sanity saving filters just to get rid of cards that do things I'm not interested in seeing. I don't need to see every cumulative upkeep card. I
Thank
don't
you.
need to see, yeah, I don't need to see, cards from a lot of mechanics, especially old mechanics that aren't great, but also like cards that are going to be too complicated. Like as much as morph is a pretty cool mechanic, it's a not in enough places, and b kind of complex for what I'm getting at with and the audience I'm making this for. Same with double face cards. I love them, but I have the pathway lands in here, but as a nod to double face. But I you don't want somebody in the middle of a draft trying to take a card out of its sleeve and figure out what it does if they've never seen it.
Especially if some of them are alpha.
Yeah, well, so I'm able to set up all that context. Here's the stuff I want to see and not see, and then build up pretty interesting queries to find cards in my packages from sets that are unfilled. Because a lot of times when I'm making changes, I'll start by saying, well, here's the cards that have to go, and then that'll leave a bunch of gaps in my spreadsheet, and so I can say, okay, well, here, Cogwork Library, I'm looking for sets with all these constraints in exactly these 5 sets, and then it should be one that deals with the discard synergy. So, you can set up Scryfall queries to find things that are payoffs or enablers for that, and so on. The other thing it's really valuable for is you can import your own cube and then reference cards in your own cube. The level 0 thing you do is like, don't show me cards already in my own cube. The, let's say, level 1 thing is, okay, find me all the cards from, well, in the case of our Skirkridge Exhumer example before, find me all the cards that are in LCI because I'm about to remove Deadweight. And it can find the ones that could fit in LCI, even if they're not currently assigned to that. So it's really helpful for me in maintaining the 3-card minimum for each set.
Yeah, it sounds like this is kind of the perfect tool for something like this, where you get to set your robust search terms, your kind of your parameters, and then you get to keep massaging them in little ways, and you don't have to type out the whole string every time. You get to
Yeah,
save your project, right? Like you get to work through your account to engage with that multiple times. Referencing your own cube sounds like a game changer
it's
for something like
amazing.
that.
It's amazing. I mean, I don't know where John came up with this idea, but it's brilliant. The other thing I really like is because I enjoy having cards that, you don't want a linear draft experience, right? You want cards that work in multiple decks. It's not just, well, I'm the discard player, I'm going to take the discard spell. Well, I'd rather have that card competed over, so I can through the tool, find cards that aren't just working with my discard synergy, but maybe also work with 2 or 3 other decks by composing subqueries. And there's a way to weight the subqueries. I tend to just weight it all equally. I found that to be more useful than having different subqueries having different weights. But it's a really nice way to locate cards that synergize with multiple things that you want to support within your own cube.
Well, in the right spirit, then shout out Danny, shout out Jon Snow here for his work on Cogwork Librarian. It's a really robust software that is doing amazing things for
Yeah,
folks trying to build projects like this.
absolutely. And he's so friendly in the Cube Talk Discord. He has a channel there where he'll take support requests and stuff. Like I had a problem with it at one point. He was right on top of it within a day. It was amazing.
That's so cool. I think that's one of the coolest things about the Cube community broadly is how willing people are to let folks in. I mean, even in this conversation, you're like, here's a spreadsheet that I devoted, we won't say how long, to putting together. But even something like that to say, yeah, feel free to hop in and take a peek, look around if it's useful to you. That people are open with those sorts of resources. I think that's an encouraging part of this.
Yeah, for sure. I've really enjoyed. I mean, everything from your own podcast that just people are coming on and talking about everything they do. I draw a lot of inspiration from that to the Cube Talk Discord. People are willing to draft your cube and give you feedback for free. It's a great community. I love being a part of it.
Well, and I'm so glad that you're a part of it as well. I know there's so much that we could explore. The joy of a project like this that represents over 30 years of a game's history. There are always going to be more nooks and crannies to turn over. I want to make sure to ask you, though, before we wrap up, I get to ask you one of my favorite questions here. Andrew, if you could have any card printed as a promo, now that you've perused the full history of the game, what card would you pick and who would you have do the illustration for it?
All right. Yeah, I was thinking about this one for a while. I've already told you what my favorite Magic art is. That was Douglas Schuler's Sarah Angel, but I'm going to be a bit of a traitor here to myself because when I was looking through the Onslaught card file not so long ago, I came across Jim Nelson's Spitfire Handler, and I'll just describe this card because I doubt anybody knows what this card is because it's pretty terrible. The illustration is this seriously deranged looking goblin holding a wyvern of some sort that is belching fire. And it's just the look on its face, the goblin's face is like, this is the best day of my life. And Jim Nelson, if you don't know, has been doing magic art forever. He has something like 150 cards, but
Long
his old
time, yeah.
style, yeah, his old style really, really is great. And the Spitfire handler is kind of everything I love about it. So my favorite kind of more recent card in Magic history is Mayhem Devil. I really like this
Mm.
card. It has to be in my cube. I think I have it tagged as pet card in the archive. And, no offense to the illustrator, but I really, really want a Jim Nelson promo of the Mayhem Devil. And if you could please, please, please channel some of his 2002 energy from his Onslaught art, I'd love to see that.
That's a great choice. Like the right blend of nostalgia and something fresh. I'm here for it. Well, Andrew, this has been a treat for me. Thank you so much for taking the time to walk us through the archive to give us this overview. If folks want to explore the spreadsheet, look more into the project, see more of what you've done with this amazing cube, where should we point them?
The cube's public on Cube Cobra, as well as some of those older projects I talked about, including the embarrassing Magic the Gathering Arena Cube.
We all start somewhere. It's
We
good.
all start somewhere. So you can look me up there and send me messages if you want. I'm also on Blue Sky at manaflare-mtg, or I'm on the Cube Talk Discord. I don't post a whole lot, but it's just mflare.
Perfect. Yeah, and Blue Sky was where we got connected there too. Just you do a really thoughtful job of detailing some of your updates, and I think it's nice to see kind of we were talking about a little behind the curtain of what goes into something of this scale.
The project tends to consume my brain, and sometimes I just need to get it out there. And I'm happy you have enjoyed seeing some of that. It's a lot of fun to both update and write about.
Well, indeed, and like you said, fun to explore. So thank you for taking the time to do it, and here's hoping that there's more opportunities to connect in the future.
Amazing, thanks.